Okay, we'll get started now. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for a webinar about Creo layout. My name is Steve Appleby. I'm Visible Edge, and I am emceeing this. Greg Hamel will be our presenter this morning. Just a couple of quick housekeeping slides before we launch into Greg's demo. Again, as I said, I'm with Visible Edge. We are an engineering services company here in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we are partnered with 3HTI, a similar company located in New Jersey. Today's webinar is Creo 2 layout. At the end of this demo, we will have a question and answer segment. Everyone is muted on this demo, so you'll use the chat window for questions either throughout the demo or at the end. Greg will stay on afterwards to answer questions as you may have them. Your contacts at Visible Edge and at 3HTI are listed on this slide and will be available after the presentation for you to download and look at if need be. Additionally, we are recording this so you can log on at a later date if you wish to review it again and watch the demo again. So Visible Edge, we are, as I said, an engineering services company. We have been in business for about 23 years now in Nashua. We've worked with many customers. Some of you on this webinar, I'm sure, know us and have worked with us over the years. We have been partnered with PTC now for 18 plus years. We were one of their first resellers. We have certified consultants and instructors on staff. In fact, Greg is a highly certified PTC instructor. He's taught many classes for us over the years on PTC products. Additionally, we are a state licensed post-secondary education institution for our training. This slide just gives you a really quick look at some of the things that we do, and there's many here: consulting, reseller of software, some training, support agreements. We have contract engineers on staff. We also do contract design work. And lastly, we are partnered with 3HTI. We are a reseller agent for software sales with 3HTI. 3HTI is very similar to Visible Edge. They offer almost identical services. They are located in New Jersey, as I said, and some of you have registered for this through them. And we collaborate together on many things. For example, these webinars, but also on engagements with clients and support each other both technically with different strengths and different skill sets. So with that said, I'm going to launch, I'll cover the quick key topics we're going to cover today. Greg's going to talk about how to develop 2D geometry quickly using easy-to-use drafting related capabilities. He's going to also speak to leveraging existing 2D geometry. And lastly, he's going to talk about complex design changes in 2D with 3D models updated. So with that said, now I'll launch into letting Greg take over and go with his demo.
Okay, I've been unmuted, so I believe everybody can hear me. And let me get to my first slide. I'm not sure. Hey, Steve, are you still on? Can you see my first slide yet?
Hi, Greg. No, I don't see your slide yet.
Okay, let me share my desktop correctly here. How's that?
There we go. Yep.
All right. So, again, I'm Greg Hamel with Visible Edge. I want to show you the exciting world of 2D layout that can be used in conjunction with Creo Parametric. And those of you that started out on the board like I did, not trying to give away my age or anything, will be very familiar with how layouts used to be used extensively before any drawings were created, of course, and way back when it was all a 2D world. So I'm going to show you how to leverage some of that in our current 3D world. So what you see in front of you is a transmission assembly, and we're going to use the capabilities of Creo Layout 2 to create this shaft that runs through the center here. And so with that, let's launch right into Creo Parametric. So we have our assembly open. And the first thing we need is a cross-section. So I'm going to go ahead and create cross-section A. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the dynamic cross-sectioning capabilities of Creo Parametric 2, but they're quite impressive. As you can see, I can slide my way through the assembly. In this case, we want to remain on the plane, so we'll go ahead and put it back to 0. And let me just show you from a front view. So essentially, as I pointed out in the picture earlier, we're going to be creating the shaft assembly that actually goes on, one each on either side of the center of this gear assembly. So with that said, let me open up the next assembly up, and with a little housekeeping here, we'll also put it on our front view and take a look. So again, this is the assembly where the shafts are going to go through. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layout. Let's call it Shaft New. And just like in Creo Parametric, we can use a layout, and so that everybody in the company can have some consistency. And we are actually in the layout portion of Creo Parametric, and notice we have very familiar tools up at the top. So we're going to go ahead and first import that cross-section that we just created in our upper level assembly, and we're going to create it with all its intersecting components. And there it is in our layout. And what's nice, if you notice over here, you'll see that we have a tree structure all set up that came from the assembly. And that, as you know from just using Creo Parametric, that'll help us managing what things are in our 2D layout. So for instance, if I pick on this line right here, it shows me that this roller bearing assembly is this part number. And let's just say that we don't want to have it in our layout. We can go ahead and just delete it. Now keep in mind, that doesn't delete it from your assembly. This is a layout that we pulled from the assembly. So because this is 2D, we're going to need to use some 2D approaches, like those of you that are familiar with 2D AutoCAD. We have to put in some construction lines to get us to where we want to be. So first of all, I'm going to put in some center lines where I know my new shaft assembly is going to reside. So I put in the vertical and horizontal center lines, and having those in place, I'm going to go ahead and put in a point. And this coordinate system. And that'll help us with the next part, where we're going to actually import our DXF. So now what I have is an old shaft that doesn't exist in 3D yet, and what I have is a DXF from AutoCAD. So in this case, I can just window the section that I need for my layout, and I can include the structure and import it right into the layout we've been creating and snap it to my new center lines. Okay, so now also look back at the structure tree. We have all the structure that came in from that DXF file. We're going to take advantage of that now. Since we need to work on that a little bit to get it to be the right shape for this new design, we're going to go ahead and shut off everything else and make sure we keep on this new part. So again, we don't need the hatching, so we can simply delete it. And it's just kind of a workflow layout that I have to delete it both in the tree and in the graphics area. For instance, let's say this connect feature I also don't need, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well. And then as I look at my shape, I realize that it's symmetrical, and I know that there's no sense in trying to make changes to both sides of it. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete half of it and use some of the layout tools, very similar to Creo Parametric, to clean this shape up to get it more to what I'm looking for. Okay, so now that we have this half basically started, we're going to go ahead and turn the rest of the layout back on and kind of look at where we are. All right, so for instance, we know as designers of this shaft, we know that this bearing race here has to line up with these faces down here, and that this bearing retainer has to clip into the shaft as well. So we can use our dimension tool within layout to very easily get our geometry to where we need it to be. So this dimensioning is simply a tool, can zero these out and get our lines where they need to be, and since they were just used as a tool, we don't need to keep them, we can just delete them. So now we have our bearing retainer in this place where it needs to be. Now we can concentrate a little bit over on this side, and again, notice that our bearing retainer area needs to be cleaned up. So once again, we're going to kind of window around, and we're going to use our control key to turn things on and off that we want to keep or delete. So what's in green we'll delete, and we can draw back in what we might need for later on, which will look something like this. And again, we can use more of our tools to help us get the geometry into the shape we need it to be. So that's getting pretty close. Now we can concentrate over here. And just like in the old days of laying out on a board, we can reuse a lot of this data. So for instance, we know our retaining ring is here, so we can go ahead and fill that in, just tracing over it. All right, so now that we have that in place, let's go ahead and see how we look by itself. Okay, shut off line tool. All right, that's good. So we're going to shut off everything but turn our outline back on and see how we're doing. All right, so again, we were working on that slot area. So we have extra lines, as you might imagine, as we traced over them. So again, we can just go ahead and use some of our tools to get us to where we want to be. All right, so now that we have half of it the way we want it to be, we're going to go ahead and mirror it. There. So there's the shape that we're looking for, and we'll check that again against our layout. And as we can see, our bearing and our retainers are in the right place. So we're now ready to move on to the next part. So we have a little bit of housekeeping here that's required by the layout tool. So we're going to create a tag here. And these are very similar to layers. Just allows you to control everything as separately as you need to. So this is going to become shaft new as well. And we're going to go ahead and make sure we have our outline selected, and we need to add that to our tag. All right, so now that we have that part, we can basically take our whole layout that's now complete, and we have to make it public so that we can use it on the next level up. So while we're here, we might as well save this. And as you can see, we very quickly took an old 2D design, put it into our layout, modified it to fit the current assemblies, and now we're going to go work our way up to the next assembly up, and we can go ahead and assemble our new layout. To our existing assembly, and there we have it. So now we want to continue on to create our part. So having said that, we're going to need to actually create our new shaft within the context of Creo parametric and assemble that in where that belongs. And now that we have it available, we'll activate it so we can go ahead and copy the geometry. And while we finish that, we'll go ahead and save it. And let's work our way back up. I'm sorry, let's open up our new shaft part so we can continue to create the 3D part. So what we'll do is we have this our shape, and we're going to go ahead and put it on the front sketch plane, and we'll add a center line. So because we're going to revolve this and go ahead and project our loop, which is from our layout, onto our sketch plane. And again, because this is a revolve, we only need half of it. So we'll go ahead and delete that, and that leaves us to finish up. And we have a break here somewhere. Oops, that one didn't take. All right, let's try that again. There we go. All right, so there's our section, and there's our part. So you can see we very quickly went from using 2D information from our assembly and from an imported DXF file, and we created our part. So let's go ahead and save this. And we'll move up to the next level assembly. And we're going to use the shaft twice, so we'll need to assemble it in again. And that's looking good. And we'll go ahead and save that as well. And now let's look at it at the top level. And we still have our cross section, so we can see that we were successful in getting our bearing race and our bearing retainers in the right place. We're meshing with the gears. And I'm going to leave it for an exercise, later on. It's just a typical Creo exercise to put the gear shape on this part and the other features that we'll need, but it's not going to be part of the demo. So, but what we will do is we notice that as we look at this, that first of all, I know that the gear teeth requires a larger diameter on the shaft, so we got to go back and change that. And if I take a look at the whole thing, I also remember that this rim, this flange, can be thicker and has to be a little bit bigger in diameter. So in order to make those changes, we can actually go straight back to our layout, and then using a dimension tool again, we can go ahead and add some dimensions so that we can change them. So let's go ahead and double this to 12. Notice it thickens up. And we'll change this, make it a larger radius to 60. And our 17, I know from the gear tooth analysis that I did that needs to be 19.5. So we'll go ahead and make that change. So now, save it while we're at it. Well, now we'll go ahead and take a look at the newly created part. And when we regenerate, we get our changes. Very hard to see in this particular file by itself. But while we're here, let's go ahead and section this and take a look. See, so it looks just like our layout as we would expect. So let's go ahead and move up to the next assembly up and take a look at that. And that's looking good. And finally, to the top assembly. And looks good from the outside. Let's go ahead and take a look at our cross-section once again. Straight on. And you can see that all the changes were made. So that's basically the demo. Are there any questions? Where'd it go? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. Anybody? Okay, it looks like there aren't any. I thank all of you for coming. I hope you saw some things that could help you be a little more efficient in some of the things that you're trying to do.
Okay, this concludes our presentation for today. Thank you all for attending, and again, the recording will be available online in a little while. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.